Oh my god. For anybody, okay, so for anybody who's wondering why we're laughing, we're restarting our conversation recording because I said something stupid and I don't like putting hard edits. So here we go. This is the official beginning of episode
Official.
3, conversations with the community with Nick from South Carolina.
Yeah.
Um, and before we kind of got into the recording, Nick and I were talking about how to approach this concept, this topic, because unfortunately, for those of you who may not be comfortable with it, there is going to be some discussion about suicide in this. And Nick, you kind of went off on this interesting thing about how it's portrayed in South Carolina. So go ahead and go over that again. That was a great point to
Yeah.
start.
So I live in a very small town, middle of nowhere, like less than 2,000 population in South Carolina. And
Okay.
the way mental health is viewed here is very not like it's taboo in like the rest of America and the world, but here it's more so viewed as like not real or negative or just like doing it for attention.
Okay.
So like anytime you come out as like, like, oh, I'm struggling with this, I need help with this, you're often received with like very negative feedback.
So give us an example if you can. Like, what would this be? Like, let's say I
Yeah,
come up
I
to
got a
you.
perfect example
Okay. Yeah.
actually.
Go for it.
I have a real life example. So after my attempted suicide, I the first day I got out the psych ward, I my mother emailed one of my English teachers or my English teacher, telling her what happened, so that way I could like graduate.
Sure.
And she responded with, "You get what you put in."
What?
To
What?
the person who
Hold
just got
on.
out of the
Hold.
psych ward.
And you, someone who went through the effort of attempting suicide, that's a
Yeah,
really strange way to talk about effort versus outcome
yeah, that,
after an event like that.
yeah, it's like,
I
the
mean,
South is wild. It's a wild place.
I don't even know what that's supposed to mean in that kind of
Yeah,
context.
I don't either. It's like I guess she thought that like I was like not trying hard enough at life or something. I don't know. She's
So
delusional
maybe she
people.
thought you were just trying to quit instead of put forth the effort to make
Yeah,
it like everybody else
yeah.
does.
Like I mentioned before we started, it's viewed as like a cowardice thing. People will call you a coward if
Right.
like you die of like a suicide attempt.
Right.
Like literally, they will tell the family members like of a victim that they were cowards. I'm not kidding.
That's fucking awful.
Yeah, yeah.
That is
It's
awful.
not a great place. It's not a great place here.
Wow. Well, you're really selling South Carolina to everybody else right now.
Yeah, it's like top 10 worst places to live in South America or in North America. It's not good.
Wow. So I wanna throw something out there. I've always found this interesting. There's a guy I like to listen to. His name's Alan Watts. He has all these videos on YouTube. He's from the 60s and 70s. He's a Buddhist speaker. And I'm not
Hmm.
necessarily Buddhist in a traditional sense, but I would say a lot of my worldview kind of falls into that category. And
Yeah.
there's one episode where he's talking about suicide and this and that. And I know for anybody who's listening who is sensitive to this subject, I ask you to just at least hear this portion. And if you get uncomfortable, I apologize. No hard feelings if you don't want to listen to this. But he posed this question. Well, it wasn't necessarily him. He said that there are some monks in the world that view there is only one question worth considering, and that question being whether or not to commit suicide. And he goes on to talk about it, and it's a really interesting concept the way he breaks it down because it's almost the complete opposite of what you're describing and how the people in South Carolina treat it like a cowardice. But really, because what he's saying is one of these two choices. If you say you choose to commit suicide and leave, then what you're saying
Hmm.
is you're opting out completely. You don't want to participate in this, whatever. But if you decide to stay, when you make that decision to stay, you choose to stay with everything that is involved with being alive. All
Yeah.
the good,
Yeah.
the bad, the beautiful, the ugly, everything.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's an often theme you find among like survivors of attempts is that like that theme of how much does it take to where I get to that point again to where I consider it like what when do I give up, how bad does it have to get, how much do I have to go through, is
Yeah.
like a like which is a really depressing, theme, but it's just the honest truth.
Well, and I think what I'd like to say is with the way Alan Watts presents it, the reason why I find it so interesting is because it's almost the opposite. I mean, what you're saying, not that what you're saying is wrong or anything like
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
that's a point of view that it's kind of almost from a negative angle. Whereas
Yeah,
what he's
yeah,
saying is choosing to stay alive in a way is a choice to embrace all of things. And I mean,
yeah.
unfortunately, that's what life
You're
is. There's
embracing you're
there,
embracing everything that you hope to come to good truth, or like to let me rephrase that. Everything that you hope will come true in your future, like everything you hope for, all your ambitions and all that, you're embracing that you will accomplish that by not choosing not to, but you also embrace all the negative experiences that
yes.
you will inevitably go through.
And it's even
And
more so just
yeah,
all of the ugliness that can exist in life to begin with. Like it's
yeah,
this idea of this is what life is, and I'm going to choose to experience that. And so
yeah,
I should find the talk. If I can find it, I'll put it in the description. I'll send a link or something because it was just a really interesting concept. Okay, but now let's turn and link this to music because obviously this portion of the channel is about music and experiences with music, and so take your experience and let's start tying it into because you wanted to talk about Answer, you wanted to talk about I
yeah.
Fucking Hate You, and then the Blonde album as well. So let's do those two
Yeah.
tracks and let's go down your path. Let's go down your
All
experience
right.
with music.
Yeah. So to start off with, I just want to say, I believe firmly that everything that you go through in life will shape the way you perceive music, like the way you will feel about it. So, for example, a track like Answer on Wolf, I listened to it, I really liked it. It's one of my favorite tracks first listening, but, after re-listening and as I went through high school, I had a lot of trouble. My father left when I was young, but he came back later in my teenage years, and then I had to go through a whole custody battle, and it was really rough.
Oh wow.
And after re-listening, going after all that, I was like, Answer and I Fucking Hate You. It phrases it almost perfectly now. How I feel about it. It's like I want to hate you, but I also love you because it's my father, it's my family. But
Yeah.
also with Answer, it's like you I don't want him to call me, because I'm spiteful. But I wish
Yeah.
if I call him, I pray to God he would answer. I'm not religious, but I wish he would answer.
And
Like that kind of sentiment.
can you get further into that? Like, because that was a question I remember having when hearing that song. It was like, it was interesting.
Yeah.
I felt it was interesting that Tyler wanted his father to answer. So are you willing to dive
Yeah,
into that a
it's
little bit?
yeah, yeah. So it's there's this inner spite, because it's how could you not have that? You're one of
Sure.
your two parents left, to they abandoned you. But then it's this curiousness of what do they, really love me? Do they want to know me? Do I want to
Yeah.
know them? Would I like that person? Would they like me? What experiences did I miss? You know, what do I have in common with this person? And it's so, but because of that spitefulness, I don't want him to contact me to this day. But if I ever if I ever try to contact him, I'd hope he answered.
Now, do you think it would be, well, let's see. Do I really want to turn this into
You can go
like
as far as you want.
well, this is where it's challenging because I want to keep to the topic of music. I think that's the core of everything. And
Yeah.
so, but I have this temptation to dive into family therapy and all this other stuff. And it's hard to walk that line sometimes,
Yeah.
but I'll share with you, my parents got split when I was in the 5th grade, I believe.
Mhm.
And I ended up living with my dad. And my mom and I, when I was young, we didn't really have a great relationship. And then, she lives far away and we keep in touch sometimes, but we're not very close. And got a good friend. His dad left before he was born and all this other stuff. And another friend. I mean, it's really kind of tragic to hear how
Yeah.
common it is that parents are leaving and stuff. And
50% of marriages end in divorce in
yeah,
America, sadly.
yeah. It's so I'm realizing just kind of thinking about it. I never really had a song that I went to when it came to trying to process that. And so it's interesting. Like I'm suddenly realizing I almost feel like there's a gap. As weird as this sounds, I feel like there's almost a gap in my life where it should have plopped in where the divorce was. But with Answer, I mean, Answer is such a powerful track. And
Yeah.
the way Tyler plays it out and the way there's that simple drum beat, and it's just, and even what is it? I guess it's like a guitar in the background too. It's not piano, it's guitar.
Yeah, yeah, it's like no, there's some piano like I think midway through the track,
Okay.
but I think there might be some like soft guitar in there.
Yeah. And then there's some of those backing vocals and stuff.
Yeah, with
I
like
mean,
the rising synths and stuff that Tyler loves to use. It's
yeah. And as I think,
perfectly conveys like that emotional
yes,
turmoil.
yes, it really does. And I'm failing as a host right now because I'm really trying to process that right now. Like, yeah, that song is very powerful for that kind of scenario. Now,
Yeah, it's
dive into
go on.
I fucking hate you a little bit. Like, how did that play out? I
Yeah.
mean,
So it
go
was
ahead.
like Answer. I'd say I fucking hate you. That kind of came before Answer because Answer was like kind of like acceptance. So like if I ever do find that I want to contact him again, I really do wish he would answer. But I fucking hate you. I'd say that was like the first thing because it was like I didn't know whether or not I liked him or I didn't because like I
Yeah,
knew him for like a couple years from like in like middle school. I would spend the summers with him, and that was it. That was it. And like I saw the bad sides of him, but I also saw the good sides and how he was like human and just like me, you know?
yeah.
And like mental illness like runs on both sides of the family. So, you know,
Uh,
I saw like myself in him. And so it's like I want to hate him because, you know, he's like fucked up our family, but
yeah,
I also, you know, I love him because he's my father and I want to forgive him because you know, it's not really his fault that he had like such a rough life and mental issues. At the same
right.
time, it doesn't completely give up his accountability.
Sure. So I guess I have a question then. You've been listening to these songs for a while. How, because we were talking about this earlier too, how as your experience in life changes, your perspective changes. And so how
Yeah.
has your perspective on these two songs changed as your emotional development has progressed through this little journey you're having?
So for I fucking hate you, it was like at first it was just kind of like a like oh yeah this described a good feeling of like confusion and emotions, but then it became like this is like what I feel personally.
Yeah.
This is like perfectly describing what I'm going through. This is like this is it. This is like this this is helping me process what is going on around me. And so it went from just like, you know, a nice song that I could appreciate to like a tool that I could use to process the events going on around me.
Kind of providing like a little clarity and just your emotional
Yeah.
state and helping to process that kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. I mean, it's just it's fucking amazing, man. It's so amazing to me how someone you've never met, who has obviously had a very different life experience than you, can write a
Yeah.
song and it just lands right in the middle of
Yeah.
your life like that.
Yeah, it's just it's like that out of nowhere, you know, like completely different upbringings. Like I don't think Tyler's even ever met his father, you know, so he has different sentiments, but at the same time, it just hits home.
Yeah,
It hits you right in the heart.
yeah. And going back to what you're talking about with mental health and stuff like that, I've noticed some people
Yeah.
have pointed out to me that I guess maybe it was Kanye or somebody else, but really I think Kanye was kind of the first one to start bringing in these ideas of mental health into hip hop, because prior it was more just being,
Yeah.
macho and chauvinistic and I'm a badass and whatever.
Yeah, I'd say it started with like Kid Cudi was the one who like popularized it. He
That's
was
the
like
one. Thank you. Thank
yeah,
you.
and then him and Kanye started working together and Kanye started being a lot more open about his like mental health and
Yeah.
unfortunately that was perceived by the media very wrong like very badly and is often used against him till like this day as to describe him as like a crazy person. And as you get on later into his discography, you'll see how how like emotional he gets about it, especially with
Yeah.
the album Yay. It's my personal favorite.
Huh.
Can't wait till you get to that eventually.
I'm looking forward to it too. But I mean, I bring that up just because, I mean, imagine this topic never gets really introduced into hip hop and it's never really allowed to be talked about. And then, you know, it never inspires Tyler to open up and be
Yeah.
who he is. And then he never makes these songs, you know, it's just, I don't know if you want to call that the butterfly effect or just, you know, cause and effect, chain reaction, whatever.
Yeah, it's just so many little events and details that if they were changed slightly, you know, my not just Tyler's music wouldn't be there, my entire life would be different. Really.
Right. Because now you don't have that one incredible tool that you
Yeah,
use to
that
help you
one yeah,
understand.
that one tool that really helped me.
Yeah. That's incredible. That's incredible. Huh. I was thinking about a line. There was a line when I was in a teenager. I was throughout my life. I was Christian for most of my life, and then about 10 years ago, I had an experience, and it changed everything. And it wasn't a negative
Hmm.
experience, but I think it's kind of natural when you're a teenager to wrestle with religion or religious ideas, especially
Yeah.
when you're all hot and horny and you just want to screw every girl that you see. Because you
Yeah.
just, yeah, I mean, that's just how the teenage male
Yeah,
body
hormones.
is. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy. But of course, in Christianity, you know, the premarital sex is terrible, and you can't do this, and you can't do that. It's all just evil, and it's all sin, and blah blah blah. And I remember just really wrestling with some of these concepts, and also wrestling with the idea that here's this entity that wants to punish me for all these things that I've done wrong, but at the same time, this entity also loves me more than I can ever imagine or know or understand. And there's a line from a song called Push It. The band is Tool. The song is Push It. And the song itself isn't necessarily too loud. It builds up at the end and kind of really breaks off and goes crazy. But there's a line at the end where he screams, "There's no love in fear." In
True.
just that one line took all of this like swirling, indiscernible nonsense and just snapped it into focus. And I went, that's what I'm experiencing. I'm being told to love something that I'm also supposed to fear, but that's not how it works. It's just not how it works.
Yeah. It's actually really interesting how American Christianity kind of developed into that. It started with like in the 1800s because, you know, Catholicism wasn't really being taken as seriously, so they deferred to bringing up, instead of focusing on like heaven and all the good things Christianity comes with, all that they started focusing on hell and like how you're gonna burn in hellfire and all
Yeah,
that,
the
and then
punishment. Yeah.
you can see the modern effects of that in today's society.
Yeah. Well, shall we dive into Blonde then and even
Yeah.
the harsher experience? I'm gonna let you take the reins on this one, man. I mean, this
Yeah.
is your very intense personal journey here. So, however it all played out, it sounded like I remember you saying that with Blonde, when you first heard it, you completely heard it one way, and then you had your
Yeah.
experience, and then the whole thing just flipped.
Yeah, it was like, so been a fan of Frank Ocean for a long time, and Channel Orange, which is another Frank Ocean album, it was my favorite. And I listened to Blonde, and like it was good. I really appreciate it. It's a good album, but Nike's, especially the first track,
Yeah,
I the like high pitched tone, it just really like off. It was just really off putting to me. I
yeah,
just didn't get it. I didn't like it. And so Blonde like wasn't my favorite album. I thought it was good, but just honestly, I thought it was overrated back then.
okay,
And but then after I unfortunately attempted suicide last year, it was like during the attempt, one of the songs that played was Nikes
hmm,
by Frank Ocean. And of course, I didn't think about it at all, during the time. I had bigger problems to deal with.
right, yeah. It's not
And
really your top concern at the moment, sure.
yeah, yeah. But then, like, after I thankfully, was okay and survived and went through the hell that was a psych ward and came out, one of the songs I found myself, putting on a loop all the time was Nikes. I just couldn't stop listening to it. I could all of a sudden, after being at the literal rock bottom of life,
Hmm.
basically, I could feel like the emotion, the pain in the music. Not It's a little harder to describe the production because I'm not as fluent in that, but more so the strain in his voice, the just the absolute despair he puts on throughout Blonde, especially, and it all started with Nikes, that
Yeah.
fascination with that song. I don't know if you know this about Nikes, but it's not about like a person. He's talking about modern society and its obsession with materialism. And Frank, describes he can't find a genuine person because,
Yeah.
and he doesn't even know if he can be genuine himself because everything is so materialistic. And
Well, and that's a theme that does kind of exist throughout the album. He doesn't really
yeah,
hammer on it, but he touches on it from time to time about, I love Solo Reprise. I think that track is
that is
just
my favorite
incredible.
track. It is
Incredible track.
Andre 3000's verse,
God.
wonderful on that.
And the way the piano plays out, and then the way when he just gets to the
Oh,
end and it just kind of stalls and the piano hangs there for a
yeah, and
minute.
you can hear like the emotion is like
Oh,
rushed voice. It's
yeah.
so good. It's
It's
so good.
fucking fantastic.
Yeah,
Amazing.
and there's
But
like
even
other
that
themes
track.
throughout. Yeah, there's other themes throughout the album, like substance abuse, dealing with like, to escape from reality. There's lines like, he's talking about on, I think it's Future Free. He's talking about smoking. I mean, he's talking about smoking on almost every
Yeah.
track, and it's always to get away from like this depression, this cycle that he's in, that he can't. Uh, he makes the plan where it's inhale and inhale.
Yeah.
Yeah, that he inhales to get out of hell,
Mm-hmm.
and he's taking like mushrooms. He had like a coke addiction, all just to like get out of like the reality he found himself stuck in.
Yeah. Well, even
And it
Solo Reprise, even when I Geronimo, I just go, eh.
yeah,
Like he's doing everything
yeah,
he can to not feel this, and now that doesn't even work anymore.
yeah.
It doesn't even
There's
work.
one line on Nights. Let me find it right here. I have it right here. Uh, let's see here. Oh, here it is. Here it is. Here it is. Where is it? Every night fucks every day up. Every
Yep.
day patches the night up.
Yeah.
That one, that's probably my favorite line in the whole album, because it's, I really relate to it, especially when I was going through a lot harsher times. It's like, no matter how good your day is, once you're alone at night, trying to fall asleep, you're just there with your thoughts. You're there with that like illness in your head, saying all these negative intrusive thoughts, and it'll no matter what you did, how much you enjoyed your day, what happened, you're it's ruined. It's ruined. Now you're having a horrible time. You just you don't want to do anything, and then you wake up,
Yeah.
and maybe your next day is ruined too because it was so bad, or that maybe the day was so good that you don't mind it anymore. But then there you go, back into the night, and it starts all over again. It's an inescapable cycle, as he would describe it.
So did that cycle? I mean, how did that? Because even the album, well, actually, the album itself isn't necessarily a cycle. The album's really cool because he does break through on the other side.
Yeah,
He does make it out, which is neat.
yeah,
And I mean, how do you relate to that now, having gone through what you've done? And I mean, it seems you've told me you're in a much better place now. You're much more
yeah,
happy, and things are good. So I mean, there's got to be some
yeah. Here,
relatability there,
yeah,
right?
yeah. So like that cycle thing, especially like last year in 2020, like I said, it was like November was when I attempted. So, and then after I got out, from November to December and parts of January, I was in my bed an average of like 20 to 21 hours a day. Like, that's not even an exaggeration.
Wow.
And so I was like, I felt like I was dying because, it's really unhealthy, but depression's a bitch.
Yeah.
And so to go through that cycle every day, and even when you would have, one good day, just like lucky, one of your friends is like, did something that like really made you happy or something like that, all of a sudden you find yourself back alone at night in that cycle again, ruining it all, and right back where you started.
But
And
in this
so yeah.
in this cycle, were you listening to Blonde, or did that?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I was every night listening to that, like Blonde on repeat. Just it was like, I'm not even kidding. Like, there's a echo in my room, and like every night I would fall asleep to Blonde. It was a good feeling. It was relaxing to like know that this isn't, I'm not crazy for feeling these things. These are
Right.
things that someone else feels, especially someone who can make, like someone who I admire so much goes through such similar things. Shows that
Yeah.
it's a human feeling,
And really
instead of
capturing
like
that
I'm going, yeah,
that
instead of like going
struggle.
insane, I can relate to that struggle, and
Right.
that despair in his voice and the production. It's yeah.
He really does capture it perfectly, I think. I mean,
Yeah.
I say that from the outside. I mean, I have not struggled with depression in any serious sense. I mean, I feel like I've been bummed out every now and then, but I've never been
Yeah.
depressed.
Yeah. It's a scale. Yeah.
Yeah, but man, listening to that album, it's like you're there with them. And so I imagine, for like you were saying with your perspective, instead of me feeling like I'm there with Frank, you probably felt like he was there with you.
I felt it felt like he was narrating what I was feeling all of a
Yeah.
sudden. Like he was describing, like he was telling me what I was feeling, and that some things I didn't even know. I was like, damn, that really hits. That this really is just a cycle that I find myself in. That's really hard to escape. And you know, and occasionally I did find myself, like escaping through like substance abuse and stuff like that. So just it's really amazing how before that it was like I admired it, probably like you would now, but I'm sure you can admire it more than I did before because you have a lot more experiences throughout your life. But um I was like, I just looked at it more as like an just a musical album, like instead of like a piece of like relatable art or a
Right.
tool. It was just another album, that I could enjoy
Interesting.
every once in a while. And I felt sad, and when I felt sad, I could listen to it, and I was like, this is cool. But it wasn't something that was powerful. It wasn't powerful to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Huh. So I mean, I kind of mentioned this to you before the other day when we were talking a little bit. I said, if Frank Ocean were, if he were to see this, I mean, what would you say to him, like right now, like if he were sitting in the room with you, I mean, and you were just able to tell him about Blonde and how much it affected you, like what would you honestly say?
Uh, I'd just thank him, and I'd say, I hope you're okay, because I don't know if you know this, but a lot of the fans, like online, especially on Twitter, I'm sure you haven't really seen any of this because it's not
I,
your thing,
I stay
but
away from it. Yeah, I hate that shit.
yeah, glad, yeah, you you should. But there's like a part of his fan base, it's a minority, but it's a vocal minority, that every time something goes wrong in Frank's life, they're like, oh yeah, he's gonna make really good music now, and it's like, fuck, man.
Ooh,
Is that like, are you a
yeah,
human being? Do you experience empathy? Like,
right.
especially one of them, his brother recently passed in a car crash, and it was people like quoting that and being like, "We're about to get some fire music." It's
Yeah, that's fucked up. I mean, that's like
like,
emotional
yeah,
exploitation right there.
yeah, yeah, literally. And so I wouldn't want to go into it too much because I'm sure he's had literal millions of people, it, explain it to him. I just thank him genuinely and just ask how he was doing,
And
and that's how I would want.
even though, I mean, even though, yeah, there's probably lots of people that would say that. I think, given the context that you just shared with these people who get excited when his life is in
Yeah.
turmoil for good music, I mean, you're really the inverse of that.
Oh yeah.
You don't want his life to be in turmoil. You don't want anybody's life to be in turmoil. But
Yeah.
the music that came from that turmoil helped to resolve your own turmoil, at least in some
Yeah,
way.
and I'm glad, but like the difference, like you said, I'm an inverse of those people. If I would be okay if he never released music again, if it meant that he didn't have to go through the things that he did, because I know how awful that is, how painful and just mind grinding that is. It grinds your brain into a paste for a long time. It's hard to unlearn the things that you learned during that time.
Yeah. Well, and the
And
irony of them wanting him to make more music, like that's the opposite way of having that happen. Like
yeah.
if you want horrible things to happen to him so he'll make more music, that's how somebody quits making music because they don't want to
Oh yeah.
satiate that kind of appetite.
Yeah. And like I think you and your wife brought it up in the AMA video of like how for a lot of artists this is just like therapy to them. They're just putting out like their journals.
Hmm.
And on Fu- Future Free, however you say it,
Yeah. He's
Frank
talking
brings
about
up,
that.
play these songs, it's therapy, mama. They paying me, mama. I should
Yeah.
be paying them. I should be
Yeah.
paying y'all, honest to God. And he goes in how he's just another person. He's
Yep.
just although he has this like musical talent, he's no better than anybody else who's listening to the music.
Yeah, I really, really like that portion of that song because to me, that's the part where he just breaks out of the hell. He's out.
Yeah,
Like
it's
he's
like,
cleared it.
yeah, yeah. He's like, being thankful for everything around him.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's
and
there's an artist. So again, the band Tool. Again, I'm a big Tool fan. Obviously, the singer. His name's Maynard James Keenan. Very interesting guy. Does a lot of different things. It's one of the things I respect about him the most is he just does what he wants to do, regardless of what other
mhm,
people think about it. And I saw an interview once with him where he was talking about because some people have complained about Tool and how they're not necessarily as hard as they used to be and all this other stuff. And he gave in this interview talking about how he makes this music to be therapeutic and help him process the things that are going on in his life. And yes, sometimes he's screaming, and when he was younger, he had a lot more anger and a lot more rage. But the goal is not to scream for the rest of his life. The goal is to
yeah,
to process these things and get through them.
yeah,
And he feels like if all he does is scream, then he's never getting beyond what's causing that. I always
yeah.
thought that
He's
was
just gonna
very interesting.
stay very angry. I believe
Yeah.
Tyler had a similar sentiment with like his earlier projects like Bastard Goblin and even a little bit of Wolf. People wanted him to stay in that like hard era of being very like edgy and
Yeah.
you know negative.
But you're not
And
growing as a person if you're doing that.
yeah,
And then
yeah,
what's the
that's
point?
yeah. Just like you love Tool so much for those reasons, I love Tyler for almost those exact reasons.
Yeah.
He's always experimenting. He's always improving. He's always like honest with himself and everyone around him. He doesn't really he doesn't just make music. He makes clothes. He released a perfume recently, and it's he makes shoes. He made maple syrup.
Oh my God, of course. Why not?
He's literally the creator. If anybody deserves that title, it's him. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
and I really admire that about him.
what I like too is, I mean, when you have artists like this, you have guys like Frank Ocean and Tyler, and I mean, even Kanye, really.
Yeah,
For me, it's Maynard, it's Trent Reznor from Nine Inch Nails, it's some other guys who these artists who like, no, I'm gonna make what I want to make. I'm gonna do what I want to do, and I'm gonna pursue the changes that naturally occur in my life, and I'm gonna embrace them and grow as a person. And I think that's so critical because it lets other people know it's okay to do that. You don't have
yeah,
to become this like entity and then stay this entity and never change. Like, no, you should always be growing and evolving as a person.
yeah. Like Frank has a he has a line for everything. On Siegfried or however you want to pronounce it, he has a verse saying, "I can't relate to my peers. I'd rather live outside. I'd rather chip my pride than lose my mind out here."
Yeah.
And I don't know how much you know about what was happening during this like era, but Frank Ocean was like he came out as like you know homosexual. He's bi. He said he's bi now, but I believe back then he refused to give any like specific title. He just said he wasn't straight,
Okay.
and he was like being attacked. Like Chris Brown specifically, he would jump him. Like he had like gang members jump him and like attack him, and he'd get like death threats and like because the industry, especially earlier back then, it was not accepting, and it
Yeah.
still kind of isn't. But it's gone far, which is good. And he's saying in those lines, he's saying that instead of flourishing in the industry, he'd rather just leave. He'd
Yeah.
rather live outside. He'd rather like be on the streets or in jail than have to sit there and adapt to what these people want.
Yeah. I'm glad you shared that because what I got from those lines were completely different. It was more of like an internal struggle. But I had no idea about those things that you were talking about. So it's
Yeah.
just another layer that exists within those lines that makes it even more interesting, which is great. There's a
Yeah.
Tyler song too. I can't remember. I think it might be off of Wolf. I can't remember which one, but it's like that little intro where the guy's talking and the guy he's saying, "Tyler, you're a gay rights advocate and you don't even know it."
Uh.
Which one is that?
Oh yeah. I think. Here, wait, I got Genius pulled up. I can look it up.
I think it's off of Wolf, but yeah,
Just
it is
continue and I'll find
strange.
it.
I don't know how
It's
that.
Rusty. It's Rusty.
Oh, okay, Rusty. I don't know how much that plays out in the rock industry. I don't really pay close attention to stuff like that, but it is just, I don't know. It's strange to me. It's sad to me. I don't really understand it. it just seems all very fearful, and I don't know of what. Like, what exactly are we afraid
Yeah,
of here?
yeah, it's just ignorance, really. That's it.
I think
They're
so. That's
afraid of
probably the best way
change
to
and
put it.
ignorance. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Another good line Frank has on it's on White Furry is, "You dream of walls that hold us in prison. It's just a skull. At least that's what they call it, and we're free to roam." In this line, specifically talking about how his partner is like anxious and really like doubtful that the relationship will go in a good place, so they refuse to like move forward, get more serious. They would rather stay in like a lighthearted tone, while Frank is more so like he wants to be serious. He wants to settle down with this person. He wants to spend the rest of his life with this person.
Yeah.
But the thing in their head and their skull that he describes as a prison is stopping them from moving forward in his life. All this anxiety and doubt in their head is just stopping them from better things.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I love about the album so much is at the end, Frank just he embraces who he is. He
Yeah.
embraces who he is, and to me, that's so important. It's so important. You got to embrace who you are, even though it's hard. It's hard. I mean, and that's what another thing I like about the whole album is he shows how hard it is to do that. The whole album
Yeah.
is him struggling with who he knows he actually is versus who he thinks he's supposed to be in this just constant torment of these two entities fighting each other. It's incredible.
Yeah. A perfect line for what you just said on Siegfried again. He says, "Been living in an idea from another man's mind."
Yeah, yeah,
And he's saying, yeah, he's like, he's just been living the life that, fans, the industry, his label, he had a lot of trouble with his label, um, wanted him to live, what they wanted him to do, the friends around him, how they wanted to live his life.
yeah.
But he's questioning, like, is he really even living his life then if it's not his idea to live like that? Is it even him
Right.
living his life? And
Now,
yeah,
with that line specifically, I mean, did you ever feel that way when you were going through your struggle? Did you feel like you were
yeah,
living in the mind of somebody or in the idea of somebody else's mind?
yeah. So before the attempt, it was like I before and after completely different people, and it was like really jarring to it was like being in the mind of a different person completely, because like not only was it just a really traumatic experience, I also overdosed on SSRIs, which is artificial serotonin basically for your brain.
Oh, okay.
And so my entire brain chemistry was fucked up. Like like it changed. It permanently changed.
Huh.
And so I was like literally in a different mindset forever. And I could never ever go back to the person I used to be. And I've accepted that now, but it's really rough to just completely literally lose yourself personally.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I smile because when I get nervous or uncomfortable, I try and laugh. That's how I
I
cope.
do the same
That's
thing,
my
yeah.
coping mechanism.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, it's pretty intense stuff, dude. And I mean, I'm glad obviously that you're better now. I think that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, I just don't know what to say. It's incredible. I'm so, I'm blown away. I'm moved. To me, it's almost like pure magic that a piece of music can be created by a person so far away, different
Yeah.
time, different place, and then slowly but surely find somebody else's ear at their point in their life and be there
Yeah,
for them.
it's like a person, it's a shoulder to cry on,
Yeah.
but it's just a piece of music. It's
Yeah.
just audio in your ear, but it helps you change everything. How you act, how you think about people, how you treat different people, how you approach, how you cope.
Has your perspective on the people in South Carolina, well, not necessarily the people in South Carolina, but just in general, people who kind of look down on depression and mental health and stuff like that. I assume that you kind of have a little bit more understanding of those people and just how little they actually understand. Has your perspective on
Yeah,
them changed? Or do you have any more sympathy toward them or
I do.
anger or
Yeah, so before I was, just like really angry, of course, because how could you not be when like I literally, I was very private about my mental health before it happened. So it was like being an undercover agent,
huh.
around all my peers, talking about how people who struggle with depression are they're faking it for attention. What do you mean they don't shower? That's disgusting. They're horrible
Right.
people. It's like, you know, they're gonna they're willing to take their own lives. What do you mean? Who cares if
Right.
they don't shower?
Yeah. Right.
And so I was just like really angry at them back then for that. But now after talking with so many people and stuff, I kind of just recognize it comes from a place of ignorance and, you know, lack of experience and that kind of thing. And it, like, there's still anger towards it, of course, because that's like awful things to say to a person. But
Yeah.
I understand a lot more now.
It's
I
interesting.
understand like where they're coming from.
What would you say to somebody? Let's pretend you are talking to you back in November of 2020, or somebody in that position.
Yeah.
And what kind of advice would you give to somebody who's in that kind of place right now?
Um, you know, there's a lot of generic advice that people love to give, like it'll get worse before it gets better, or like, you know, if you can't be helped if you don't want help. But really, all that matters is that you're trying. All that matters is that you're trying, no matter how little or how much you're trying to get better. Whether that just be like, you know, texting your friends once a day so that way you can keep contact, you know, have a social relationship, or if it's something more significant like keeping a scheduled routine. It doesn't really matter how big or small, as long as you're trying to get better, you you deserve to be better. Like, I'm not saying nobody doesn't deserve to be better, but that's the mindset that a lot of people in that situation find themselves in, where they feel like they don't deserve to be happy because they're laying in bed all day. Or at least that's how I thought about it myself.
Okay.
And so like what helped me a lot is as long as I'm putting in effort, it's okay, you know? It takes time. And sometimes, you know, it took me months and, you know, it took me months just to get out of that place, and I'm still, you know, healing and processing my own emotions every day.
Yeah.
And so it's, you know, it's a lifelong battle, but it'll get better, but it's not guaranteed that it's going to get better fast at all. So just keep trying. Keep trying. Like, I know that sounds corny, like don't give up, that's what everybody says, but don't feel bad for not trying hard enough at life.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think that's something that's easy for people to get caught up on is I didn't try hard enough, and that is bullshit. If you're trying, you're
Yeah.
trying, and that's it.
Yeah, it's
Everyone's
yeah.
got their capacity, what they're able to do. If you're trying, that's all that matters.
Yeah, as long as you're like, I referred to it as like surviving. Back then I was in like survival mode because, you know, I almost died and now I'm like struggling to live, get out of bed and like feed myself. So it's like being in a survival mode of just doing very little things just so I can be okay with myself.
Yeah,
And so you just got to recognize that it's okay to not be okay. And no matter what the people around you say to you, whether or not they're loved ones or friends or whatever, they if they you got to recognize it's coming from a place of ignorance. You know, they can't be what they haven't gone through what you're going through. So it will hurt a lot when they say things, you know, like you're lazy, you're doing it for attention, all that, which is very common among that kind of situation. But you kind of just gotta ignore them. As hard as it might be, you know, it's a lot easier to say than it is to do. But you just kind of you gotta drown them out and just know, you know, deep within yourself, you're trying, and that's all that matters. It doesn't matter if they think you're not trying or whatever. All that matters is that you know that you are doing your best.
yeah. I think it's well said. I think that's well said. Do you have any? And I hate to. It almost sounds cheesy to ask this because I'm trying to keep my theme and all this, but what kind of music would you recommend to somebody who's just really struggling with this idea of I'm not trying hard enough, or I'm struggling, or I'm
Um,
these
I got a
feelings?
I got a specific artist perfectly for this. Although it's not hip hop at all. It's called Car Seat Headrest, and their music is it's one guy, but he has people occasionally. He has people helping him occasionally. It's the most emotionally charged music you'll ever hear in your entire life. It
Car seat
like
headrest.
Yeah, Car Seat Headrest.
Huh.
Um,
What kind of
yeah,
genre is it?
it's kind of hard to describe. It's kind of like a punk rocky kind of thing. It's just very emotionally charged music, and they experiment with a lot of different things. But like, if you thought my experience with Blonde was dark, Car Seat Headrest is a whole nother beast. They go perfectly into the deepest, darkest places of mental health. Like they go from like, describing all how much it hurts to see your loved ones say, like, there's one line that says, that's like quoting a family member, where it's like, I liked you better when you hated yourself. And it's like,
wow,
fuck, that hurts.
wow,
Yeah, it's like, I liked you better when, like, you were nicer when you weren't, like, being active and, like, taking care of yourself.
wow.
And which is a symptom among people who need help, is they often are really nice to the people around them. They start giving things away and stuff like that. And, so that hit home. They have a track called Can't Cool Me Down. It's the most perfect way I've ever seen mania described, of like this inability to stop yourself from feeling such intense emotions and doing, like rash decisions, but you're doing these things, but you can't stop, you can't cool yourself down. No one can cool you down until you're done. And even from like the production on that track is so amazing. It describes perfectly that feeling, that very intense feeling of mania. I'd recommend Car Seat Headrest. They're very good.
I want to put in this idea for anyone who might be listening, thinking, what are we trying to do here? Are we trying to amplify these negative feelings? And what I want to put out is this idea, because for me with music, or actually not even necessarily music, with emotions specifically, I feel it's very important to express a full range of emotions.
Yeah.
Some guys hear it more, I think, often than others, of, you're not supposed to cry, or you're not supposed to do this, not supposed to do that. And I think it's total bullshit, because to me, when someone tells me you're not supposed to cry, it's like you might as well tell me I'm not supposed to laugh. And
it's like
the idea of not laughing,
like a robot.
Yeah, the idea of not laughing is absurd. Like, no, I absolutely need to laugh. I need to experience these emotions. I need to experience all of these emotions so that in a way I can expel them and get them out, like exercising the demon.
You'll never be able to love yourself and be happy with your life if you don't feel your emotions.
You got to feel them.
Yeah, you got to feel them. It'll hurt like a motherfucker, but once you get it out, once you understand why you feel that way, and maybe you'll never understand where it comes from, but it'll help a lot in dealing with it in your everyday life.
Yeah.
And you'll even find feelings that, like, you didn't know you had, that you repressed back in your head because, you've been told that, like, pussy shit.
Yeah, right,
you don't feel that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that's why music, like, that's why I was asking, some of these songs, because I feel like music is a channel for that. It allows someone to, maybe if they're nervous about feeling this way or the other, you put on a song, and when that syncs up with how you feel, you can express that emotion so much easier and really channel that out and get it out.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's like, you find words for what you're feeling that you would have never been able to express before. You never would have found those words if you didn't listen to that piece of music or whatever.
Yeah.
And once you're able to, like, put it into words, it's much easier to, like, to explain to, like, a therapist, or even, like, your friends, whoever you want to talk to, or even if you don't want to talk to anybody, just write it down, or whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
And once you can finally express it, it becomes a lot less frustrating, and, like, becomes, you stop being hopeless because you understand.
Yeah. And I think really, these things that are weird, smeary, undefinable things become more distinct. And then when they become more distinct, you can start to take this giant mess and break it apart into manageable sections and go, okay, I can't handle everything, but I know what this is now, and I can take this and I can put this over here, and I can manage that. And then all of a sudden it's a little bit smaller, and slowly over time, as you take this whole thing apart, it becomes manageable. But it does take time, just like you were saying.
Like, I get it that I know some people find it silly because it's like it's a piece of music. Like, some people don't see it anymore as like hip hop or any other piece of music. It's just something to listen to. But
Yeah,
it really is, once you find something that like hits home for you, something that you can relate to truly, you'll understand. You'll see how much it changes your perception on things.
absolutely. Have you ever heard of the band Daughter?
Um, Maybe, but I've never listened to
Oh,
them.
you might want to check them out. So check out Daughter and listen to the album. What's it called? If You Leave. Daughter, If You Leave. Incredible album, in my opinion. It's pretty dark. It's kind of moody, but I don't know. There's something special about that album. I love that album. I've listened to it for a long time, and it's just one of those things where I can't describe it, but it connects with these weird little pockets with me sometimes, and
Yeah.
I love it. Absolutely love it. And it's like you're saying, I mention that just because even I don't get it sometimes. There are people who say,
Yeah.
I don't understand why this music is so important or why it matters so much. Even I don't get it sometimes, but I love
Yeah.
the shit out of it. It's an intangible quality. It can't be described. It's just magic. It's pure
Yeah.
magic.
Yeah, like Wolf has always been my favorite album, but for the longest time, I could not explain why when
Yeah.
people would ask me.
Yeah.
It was just like, I just really like it. Like, I don't know what you want from me.
Yeah, right.
But
Yeah, leave
yeah.
me alone.
Yeah, it's like I'm still figuring this out. You gotta wait a long time for me to explain it to you.
Yeah. Yeah. Huh. Well, you know what, Nick? I think we navigated that fairly well. I think. I think
Yeah, I'd say so.
I appreciate your openness, man. This is a very cool story. I feel like there was a lot of times I just did this because all I'm doing is I'm just trying to soak this in
Yeah,
and
just processing.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's incredible. I'm very happy that you find your way through. I'm very happy. That's an awesome thing. I mean, it's obviously it sucks that you had that struggle, but the fact that you made it through is fantastic.
Yeah, I wouldn't be the person today if I didn't go through all that. So, in a
Yeah.
way, I'm glad that I did.
Well,
Not that I would ever want to relive it.
and I assume you're a Kanye fan. Do you like Kanye?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Everything you are is everything you're not, right? Or what's the song?
yeah.
Everything I am is everything I'm not.
Something like that. Yeah, it goes like that.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it is. It's everything that happens in our life is what shapes us. And then that's who you are.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, do you have any closing thoughts that you'd like to share or any departing wisdom? I'm putting you on the spot.
Take a closer look at music. That's all I have to say is like, try to figure out why you like the things you like. It'll be very hard at first, but whether it doesn't have to be something, depressing or deep, but, like Playboy Cardi fans, why do you like Whole Lotta Red so much? Kanye fans, why is Late Registration your favorite album? It's just, ask yourself,
I
just
think that's a
do
great
some little
point.
searching.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think there's a lot of a power there in because it's easy to enjoy something and enjoy it even if you love it somewhat in a passive way and not really fully understand why you like it, like you're saying. But there's a power there if you take the time to figure out why, because then
once you're able to appreciate it even more.
Yeah.
You'll like it even more.
Well, and then it becomes easier to understand why you like other pieces of music.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it starts to click.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. That's good. Well done, Nick. You passed the test there. Oh man. Well, that was 55 minutes. I think that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Episode 3.
Starting.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you coming on, Nick, and hanging out with me and talking for a while. I think that was really cool, man. Really cool.
Glad to be here.
Yeah. All right, y'all. Well, there you go. Episode 3, Conversations in the Community. Good times. And we'll see y'all on the next one.
Yeah.